Hey folks, welcome back to Demystify Side. Today on the show we have Miklos Lukacs. He is a commentator. He has a background PhD in technology, and really
Technology studies.
technology studies, and he's fixated on futurism to give some sort of an antithetical perspective to this techno-utopian future that has been promised to us by everything from corporate America to the states to the public schools. And there's this drive towards a future that is highly mechanized, it's convenient, it's efficient. And the question remains, is that what we want as human beings?
I think the central question that we explore is, what does it look like when technology stops serving humans and instead humans serve technology, which I think in the age of the algorithm is a pretty common fear. And so Miklos comes at it from a very, I would say, socially conservative lens. His angle is that humans are a certain way, and we need to do everything that we can to protect the inherent humanity that we have evolved over the course of, let's say, the last 10,000 years of civilization.
Yeah, and so there is some sort of a values conversation to be had there, but ultimately we're all looking for a constructive future that is better for the human beings on this planet, that's more in harmony with the world that we inhabit. And so we're circling around this topic very carefully. There's so many controversial topics, so if you have any triggers regarding, I don't know, homosexuality, trans rights, all of these things,
Abortion,
abortion,
marriage.
I mean, you're probably going to be offended, but there's a conversation to be had about each one of these, particularly in the context of human values, human well-being, and the future. What do we want the planet to look like collectively? Because we all share this Earth together, and there's no way around that. So,
if you like what we do, come over to patreon.com. We are right over here. For a couple of dollars a month, you can help support the project. It prevents us from putting sponsorships on it. It prevents us from running multiple ads over the course of the episode. And honestly, it allows you to join what I think is one of the coolest new communities on the internet, which is our Sunday Fun Day patron chat. We get together once a week, Sunday mornings, and just talk about the things that people have been reading, people have been curious about, and explore the ideas that go into the podcast. And it helps me because it expands, the books that I need to look into, the ideas that I need to explore. And it's been really, really cool to watch this community form where we've been doing it for more than a year now. And it's grown, but the core membership is really driving it. And so thank you guys. Thank you to all the patrons that already support us. If you want to become one and you have a couple dollars a month to spare, patreon.com is where it's at.
So with that,
enjoy the conversation, and we'll see you next time.
The scientific revolution starts now.
The Demystify Side podcast.
Let us see in the dark.
Tell us about what transhumanism is so that everyone's on the same page when we use that word.
Well, transhumanism is, I think it's a mix between secular religion, mysticism, cultural studies, anthropological philosophy. It's like a combination of fields that view humans as something that should be perfected. From a very beginning, I would say that transhumanism is anti-humanist because it does not accept humanity as it is. It finds it limited. It finds it fallible, vicious. So in order to fix our mistakes, our wrongs, or everything what is wrong about us, you have to apply technology. So
it's the technological aspect of it that makes it transhumanism as opposed to, say, like a religion, right? Because
a personal responsibility or something where you're also trying to perfect yourself.
Because that's kind of what the Bible's about, right? It's about perfecting this fallible human.
Yes, I can go for that also. But at the beginning, what I would say as part of the definition, so you have that starting point, and it seeks to what they say, enhance. That's the word that is used, enhance. And it seeks to enhance human beings from a physical, intellectual, cognitive, and even moral point of view. So it's a comprehensive enhancement. But
Are,
of course, this. Tell me, yeah.
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
ask, are there authors that you think epitomize this the most, or like specific figures who are the source of the ideas?
Oh yes, you have you have some major figures in transhumanism which have been extremely influential. So, for instance, from the, let's say, the super longevity perspective, because there are three supers that they want to achieve: the super longevity, super intelligence, and super well-being. So, from the super longevity, so basically, to seek immortality as human beings, one of the leading proponents is a British academic. His name is Aubrey de Grey. He's a
Hmm.
Cambridge
We had him on
graduate.
the podcast very early. One of the
Yes,
first people
yes,
we
yes,
had.
yes. Well, Aubrey de Grey looks for super longevity. So he
Mm-hmm.
thinks actually that death should be treated as a disease. It's a disease that should be corrected. So yes, that's one. The other one, I would say,
And
from the
his
super.
fundamental approach, I think, is growing very large beards.
Oh yeah, oh he loves his,
That's the
yeah,
trick to
that guy
longevity.
loves. Yeah, he has a very. I mean, I don't know for how long he has not shaved that beard, but that's years. I'm telling you.
Gotta give credit where
Anyways.
credit's due, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, so in the super intelligence side, you have Nick Bostrom. He was the former head of the Future of Humanities Institute at the University of Oxford, which has just been discontinued, surprisingly. So Nick Bostrom advocates for super intelligence, and basically what he seeks is a variation of transhumanism, which is called posthumanism. So he actually believes at some point not even our artificial bodies will be needed, not even the biological ones. Then we will transition towards artificial bodies, and then we will become this kind of sentient spirits of intelligence. It's a very science fiction based approach, where we will just unite and become like a super collective intelligence.
This
And
kind of
then
plays
on
into
this.
the AI dream, too. We can get into that later, perhaps.
Exactly, it's fully into AI. Yes, absolutely. And then you will have, from the super well-being perspective, the most prominent philosopher is David Pearce. He's a British philosopher.
I've
So
also had him
David
on the
Pearce,
show.
yes, I also interviewed him for my channel. It was a very interesting interview. Actually, when we finished the interview, because I traveled to Sussex, to Brighton, to interview him, I told him just to fool him around because I know he's a vegan. So just to, I know it was bad, but I said, would you go for a McDonald's? And he was actually angry when I said that.
Oh, no.
So we went to this super mega vegan restaurant. It was the first and last time I'll visit a vegan restaurant, but it was fine. Anyways, so David Pierce
Couldn't have been worse than
advocates.
McDonald's.
Yeah. So yeah,
I'm not sure that's food either.
yeah, well, whatever it is, but it was just to piss him off. Anyways, so from the super well-being, you have David Pearce, and Pearce says that he has a very interesting term, which is called the hedonistic imperative. So it's an imperative that we move towards, playing with our genes to reach levels of sublime feelings, of sublime pleasure, that pain should be eradicated, and not only in human beings but across species. So yes, you have these prominent philosophers, and then you have Raymond Kurzweil also. He's very famous, one of the leading proponents of transhumanism. He's working at Google right now, which also gives you a hint of where these big tech companies also go to know. And Raymond Kurzweil was talking about that we will reach a point where there's like an explosion of super intelligence, which he calls the singularity. Well, actually, he didn't coin the term. The term was coined in 1993 by Vernon Vinge, which is another U.S. Thinker. But basically, at that point, artificial intelligence will become self-conscious. So with this self-consciousness, basically, it will be the end of humanity, perhaps, because we don't know if the machines will be looking at us as, nice pets, or as an element that should be eradicated. So yes, you have these views. So basically, what I said is transhumanism is this, this intent of changing human beings and very important, in the name of progress. In the name of progress. So in the name of progress, we have to change. But this progress is a view, it's a utilitarian view of progress, and it is a very materialistic view of progress. And for that, we have to change. And the problem is that how do you improve something by destroying it? There's a fundamental contradiction in transhumanism, because they seek to, enhance human beings, but you don't enhance something by destroying it. You will basically look for transforming human beings into something that is not human anymore. And then brings a lot of other questions, like, for example, what will the moral the moral foundations of the new entities that come here? What will be the new institutional or legal codes that will come with this? It will it be a shared morality? We don't know. It's open. But there's also an act of faith of transhumanists, because it's interesting. Transhumanists are very anti-Christian by nature. They are profoundly anti-Christian. And when you see these Mormon transhumanist movements, or Protestant transhumanist movements, it's just fooling people. Religion is in fundamental contradiction with transhumanism. When you see these charlatans talking about religion and how religion, promotes or seeks a path towards changing ourselves, that's basically BS. In no part of Christian doctrine is it said that you have to destroy humanity. And it starts from a fundamental, let's say, a fundamental precept of Christianity, that we are all made at the image of God. But in transhumanism, you have to reject that fundamental idea, because you will become whatever you want to become. You will become whatever your self-perception tells you to become. And,
not only that, but there's ample folklore associated with the Christian doctrine suggesting that fundamental tendency to outdo God, to outshine God, results in complete disaster. There's lots of, from Milton on down, right? There seems to be this doctrinal association of chaos with trying to outdo nature.
Well, it's basically the intent of human beings from, transitioning from Homo sapiens to Homo Deus. That's the title of the book of Yuval Noah Harari. That book's title has a purpose. We are going to become gods. But then we go into another issue, because it's not that we, some perhaps, but not we. It's a very tiny minority, perhaps those who have access to technology, because if they are accessible, they will not be cheap at the beginning. So a few will be able to be enhanced, as it is happening right now. There's a guy who is just doing blood transfusions and doing exercise and having a super special diet. I think he sleeps like 10 hours a day. I don't know what's the name of this guy.
Brian Johnson.
But he's exactly. He's like 40 something and he looks like 20 something. So yeah, he's one. Yes.
There's a weird vampiric veneer to his youth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's quite cringy from my perspective. That's my opinion, of course. But
he looks like he would do well in Iceland. He looks like he hasn't seen the sun in some time.
Are these the same folks that are banging on about overpopulation and so forth simultaneously? I mean, the idea that this only works out for a few people. It's like, what's to become of everybody else? And I run into this overpopulation narrative a lot when I talk to people, especially environmentalists and people who are really concerned about sustainability. And obviously, they're not giving up their kids; it's somebody else, right?
Of course, we can go to that, because there's, of course, a very, very intimate connection between transhumanism and the current agendas of what we call the progressive world. I would say environmental alarmism. I would call abortion, LGBT rights, gender identity, trans identities, feminism,
corporate social justice.
Social justice warriors, and all these agendas that come up with what the progressive movement is. So everything that is, for example, to summarize, everything that is proposed by the Democrats in California or in Oregon or in Washington State, East and West Coast, the rainbow flags everywhere. It has a connection, and we can delve into that later. But what I was going to say is that they use this word enhance, and enhancement it's a tricky word, because it's an act of faith to think that you will enhance human beings. the correct word is to say that they will modify human beings. But you don't know that modification may go awfully wrong, and there will be no enhancement at all. So you see that in many ways, transhumanism tries to imitate badly, Christian doctrine, because they want to make man omnipotent, omnipresent, to resurrect. You have Alcor in Arizona, for example, this company that, if you have enough money, I think it's 170,000 or 250,000. I'm not sure. It's a brutal sum of money. When you die, they will go to your home and they'll cryogenize you. They'll inject you a kind of a liquid, colloidal stuff, and they'll freeze you. But if you don't have enough money, well, they can behead you and they'll freeze your head. It's pretty, dark. It's very dark. But they seek for resurrection. They seek for all what religion seeks for, at least the Christian religion, which is the one I'm most familiar with. But I don't know. History has shown that every time that humans have tried to define, not even God, I won't put it in those terms, when they have tried to define nature or to master nature, things have gone bad. So, for example, this is not a new project. I mean, transhumanism has been there for a long time, not as transhumanism as such, but or as a formal ideology, but in the intent of man to overcome his or her natural limitations. So, Icarus, for example, is an early example of transhumanism. Don't fly near the sun because your wings will melt. Well, he thought himself overpowerful, and he ended drowning himself because his wings melted. With the wax of his wings melted. So you can say Faust is also the same kind of stuff. Frankenstein. So there have been intents, and in the real world, 1917, the Bolsheviks, when they arrived into power, they wanted to create a new man, the Soviet man. And they had the construction of God plan, where they tried to create this superhuman, and they thought that they could, through science, create a new breed of humans. Actually, Lenin was balsamized, thinking that he could be resurrected. It's as dark as that. So history has shown that every time that human beings try to defy nature, or in more religious terms, defy God, things have gone wrong. And I think this time is not going to be no different. It's going to happen again.
Yeah, so maybe we can pick apart these individual platforms and look at, you mentioned 3 supers. Maybe we can take a look at where each one of those could go off the rails.
Because, I mean, in theory, all 3 of them sound very good. Super longevity, super wellness, super intelligence. These are all things that you would want humanity to aim for.
Well, we can pick on the intelligence one first, maybe, because we listened to that interview with Kurzweil a while back. We made a little podcast conversation about it. And one of the most troubling things about the Kurzweil interview that we listened to, which was the one on Rogan recently, was that Kurzweil didn't seem to have a very good crystal ball of what that singularity future looked like. He just kept saying, well, we'll figure it out when we get to it. And that makes me nervous. Whenever somebody is like, we'll figure it out when we get there, I'm always a little distrustful of that even being a plan. And that's, I guess, for me, the overarching theme here that I'm most worried about is that these systems are autonomously operating in the background, that people are trying to succeed in all these individual niches, and they're finding careers and work and growth and making products, but nobody's really got their hand on the wheel. It's like we're full steam ahead towards what? I don't know what exactly. So maybe we can start with that one.
Well, I share your intuition, because if we're dealing with something as serious as changing ourselves, man, at least have a plan. Tell me where you're heading towards, and we'll fix it on the way. No, sorry, we're not going to put the most important thing that we have, which is our humanity, and just risk it, or flip a coin and let's see what happens. No, it doesn't work that way, because the costs are probably irreversible. You may lose what you are. Let's say with super intelligence, let's start with something general. So let's fix my position so people understand where I'm coming from. I did a PhD in science and technology studies, so I'm technophobic. I'm not a technophobe, just to start. So I believe technology has done wonderful things for human beings, and it will continue to do wonderful things for human beings. We use technology every single day, and it has uh, objectively improved our quality of life for the past, especially in the past 100, 20, 50 years. So let's stress that point. So I'm not against technology. I think converging technologies like artificial intelligence have wonderful potential. For example, already you are using AI technology through, let's say, image recognition to detect early cancer, skin cancer. Wonderful. How can things go wrong with that? That's a good thing. Or, for example, you can use artificial intelligence systems to reduce the waste of food, by training the algorithms to see what's the rotation of each product in supermarkets or in production markets. You will not send the 10 tons of bananas to Walmart in Oklahoma for 2 tons of them to be rotten, as it happens in the US. The US is the cradle of food waste in the world. So I think those things are wonderful. So let's see, gene editing technologies, CRISPR, wonderful things. You could cure monogenic diseases like cystic fibrosis. Just change one gene. Of course, you have to go deeper through that because there's um, an integrated role of genes. It's not that they operate on their own. They
Pleiotropic
meant some
effects, yeah.
pleiotropic effects. Exactly, the pleiotropic effect. So you you have to be very, very careful of what you're doing. But once, if you sort out those kind of things and you can cure a disease like that, well, sorry, I'm very happy with that. Things get a little bit into gray areas with xenotransplantations or xenotransplants. These man that was got a heart that was harvested from a pig, and this recently just I think another person who got a kidney which was harvested from a pig. Yeah, those are gray areas. I am not. My mind has not been fully made up of how do we go there. Because of course, if I say, okay, you have your son or your daughter or your father is in a situation of emergency, and that's the only way you can help him, I think I would go for it. So one thing is it's moral theory, and another thing is, let's say, not normative morality, but prescriptive morality. What do we do in these situations? But overall, I would say that my attitude towards technology is positive. But I am, especially in the current times, I'm getting more techno skeptic. So prove me what kind of things that those technologies can do, and if they prove their worth, I will support them. But just speculating about the future, I'm not into that, especially for what we're playing now. Regarding the need of human beings have always had this desire of having wonderful babies. Everybody wants to have a wonderful offspring. So in some ways, when you find your partner and you mate, have sex, and your genes are working there. Your instinct is working there to find the best a reproductive partner. So there's kind of, let's say, a benign form of eugenics or a subconscious form of eugenics. So that's ingrained in us. But nature doesn't lose its major role, because why do I say it's not that I'm just a naturalist by chance. I think there's an accumulated wisdom of nature that we can hardly surpass, even with our most advanced technologies. This has been going on through billions and billions and billions of years. Sorry, I will trust that. I won't trust the rational mind who tells me, "Oh, things are going to be great with this technology." No, sorry, they won't, because your cognitive limitations are so big, and your optimism is so irresponsible, and your promises are so empty that I prefer to abide to nature. So I'll trust nature in this regard. And I'll keep trusting nature I would keep trusting nature for the 1,000 years to come, because it's a tiny part of history. I mean, we are just like nothing in the grand scheme of things. So I think it's defying time-tested wisdom, and it never goes wrong.
I mean, I think that something that's really apparent here is that nature has a tendency of operating from the bottom up. There is a sense of, like you said, the mate selection is possibly the softest form of eugenics that there is, because you mate with somebody and not with somebody else. You've selected for a set of traits that you value, and then hopefully your offspring inherit them. And so it's this constant iteration on what is desirable at the level of the individual. And that seems to work pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I've been thinking about this a lot, it feels like the entire project of civilization is man's insistence that he will defy nature. Because nature would have you living in small tribes, hunting, gathering, living off of the environment. The idea of governments and money and armies and specialization and all of these other things are in many ways antithetical to primate nature.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. So, and thank you for this, this, let's say, background thought that you have put, because it is true. We are by nature we are curious, and by nature we are never satisfied, and our nature will always lead us to find truths out there and discover things and make things better for us to have better lives. So that goes again with the same. I would relate this to my point where I'm not a technophobe. I'm a techno skeptic. Uh, Look, things will change. Whatever we say right now in the world in 200 years will be absolutely different from what it is today, and people will look at back and say, well, you know what, do you remember that podcast with these three guys? They were just so primitive, it looks so old age, and it will be like that. But that doesn't deter us from, because when you people from our every current time looks at that past with certain disdain and a sense of inferiority. Oh, these guys were inferior. We're built on the shoulders of giants. We are more advanced. And it is true. But there's something that doesn't change. In spite of what transhumanists say that changes, which I think it doesn't, which is human morality and what we are. I mean, Romans were not very different from what we were. Mesopotamians were not very different from what we are. They hated the same as we hate. They loved as much as we love. They were, envious and resentful. Human nature has been the same. Now, they always come with this stupid example. Sorry for it, because it's just plain stupid. Oh, but we have abolished slavery. No, we haven't. We haven't abolished slavery. Still keeps going on. What we have done is we have learned through this Hobbesian kind of approach to human nature. Thomas Hobbes had a very, very the English philosopher, or the author of the Leviathan or Leviathan, I don't know how you pronounce it in English. He had a very negative view of human nature. He thought that humans were nasty, were mean and brutal and vicious, and he was absolutely right. He nailed it, because we are.
I mean,
But
some of us are more than others,
yes,
right?
yes,
And so I think that there's
That's the crux to all of this, and even your technological stance. I think I wonder if you would agree with this statement, but it's all about intent, right? It's like you can use a hammer to build a house, or you can bludgeon your wife to death with it, right? I mean,
exactly.
both options are available to you, and that's the beautiful thing of being a human being. That's the thing about being a human being. You have to choose all of the time. And what's really creepy about it, we can stick to intelligence, but it's like, what is this intelligence going to be used for? What is this longevity? Who is it going to apply to? What are they going to do with it? Same with well-being. Who? Why? For what end? It's all about intention with these things, as far as I can tell.
Well, there are several lines that can go from that point, but the first one would be that we are mean, we're nasty, but we are also creative. We can also be cooperative. We can also be virtuous. We can also show many positive aspects. So, as you say, and I fully agree with this base thought, is that it is our imperfection what makes us worthy, of trying to live as humans. When you have machines, when you have this future where machines will just fuse with us or replace us or complement us, who knows? It's a world that moves towards efficiency and productivity. And this is nothing new. I'm not discovering the powder. This is something that Jacques Ellul, the great French philosopher, in the technological society, already warned. We are moving towards a world of efficiency, but masses are being mechanized. So there's no search for truth anymore, or for wisdom, or for love, or for solidarity, compassion, piousness. No. It's all about efficiency. Let's be efficient. So societies, gradually turn into some mechanized thing. You will see this in a more theoretical aspect through the actor network theory of this French philosopher. Oh, I cannot remember his name right now. Bruno Latour. Bruno Latour, that's his name. So Bruno Latour talks about the actor network theory. He's not alone. He's with other theoreticians or theoretical guys. So he says basically that we are all in a system, living beings and inanimated beings. We are all part of a system, and there's no distinction when you're part of the system. And well, if you said this, 50 years ago, just 50 years ago, people would say, no, there's a distinction. Human beings are moral beings. And so that makes them apart from all these, standardized system of parts. But now, when you think about technologies like, the Internet of all things, or this system where everything will have its own particular chip. It's not that chip. It's like a sensor, an ID sensor or whatever. You will just become a number. You stop being Michael. I stop being Miklos, and everybody stops being someone to become a number. And as silly as it may look for people who have not thought deeply about this, when you relate to numbers, you start dehumanizing the other. You stop. Just look at the concentration camps. People had numbers. They didn't have names, they had numbers. And you start treating people as, or let's say morally evaluating people according to their usefulness or not. Oh, you're useful. Well, you can remain into the system. You are not useful. Well,
essential workers.
Exactly, essential workers. And essential
which is
workers,
like Target and...
exactly. That's Yuval
garbage
Noah
box
Harari
stores.
also talks in those terms, the useless class and this kind of, the Ted Turner said useless eaters or comensales inútiles, people that eat and are absolutely useless. So yeah, it starts getting creepy because you will treat people as things. And that's one of the main problems I find also with transhumanism. It's that it's hardcore utilitarian approach. It ends objectifying people, and you don't treat human beings as individuals with an inherent dignity and value. And that's a Christian contribution. People forget. Oh, and let me clarify. I have serious doubts about the existence of God. So my position is not a Catholic or Christian one. I am talking from just a layman's view in religion. But I do recognize that Christianity has brought many fundamental concepts. So one of them is that people are humans, and they are not only humans, but they are also persons. So when you create that condition, or when you create that condition of a person, you are recognizing that that person has an inherent value, dignity, a worth. Transhumanism, or sorry, utilitarian approaches say no. You are just a thing. If you are useful, you will stay. If you are not useful, you will not stay. Let's take for instance, and I think it's a good point now to talk about this. All these animal rights movements. Look, I'm a vet by training. I love animals. I really love animals. I'm against bullfighting. I'm against cockfighting. I'm against dogfighting. I hate those things. I really think they do not elevate us as humans. They just degrade us, by taking pleasure on the suffering of other species. I find that degrading. But anyways, as much as I like animals, I can recognize and I can accept that animals are not moral subjects. They aren't. Animals don't eat based on moral decisions. If a hyena is hungry, we'll just chase a gazelle and that's it. Oh, poor gazelle, it's a little gazelle. Oh, should I kill the gazelle? Maybe no. There are no moral deliberations. Animals act by instinct. And it's not bad or wrong. It's not bad or good. It's just the way it is.
One could call instinct a proto-moral system. Like the hyena and the cow were once, if you take evolution to be the story, they came from a shared ancestor.
I think a better example is dominance fights, where oftentimes these animals will have these big ritualistic displays of aggression towards one another, but they're not aimed at killing the opponent. They actually just want both somebody will lose and walk away eventually before the other one gets killed, and there's almost a quasi proto morality to that.
There is, but I want to make this point in the evolutionary frame, which is that there's a common ancestor that contains within it both possibilities. It contains both the hyena and the cow. And along the line of evolution, there are decisions made by individuals within the population of the common ancestor that lead to the development of the cow versus the hyena. And I would say that that's a proto-morality. That the cow, that at some point, like, and you can say that it was because it was like easier or whatever, but
yes. I mean, I'm not going to discard your point of view. I think it's a possibility, of course. I'm not discarding that. But again, and please don't get me wrong, I am not denying science by saying this, but evolutionary theory is just that. It's a theory. Could someone say, "Oh, we are coming from a common ancestor"? Is it fully proven? Yeah, it's not. It isn't. It isn't proof. I mean, there's fossils missing in certain periods that do not support the theory, and it is just that, a theory. Do I think it is interesting? Yes. Do I think it makes sense? Yes. Would I look at that theory as an alternative to other explanations? Perhaps yes. I would abide to evolutionary theory. I think it's, for us currently, it's the dominant paradigm. Until some dominant theory may come in the future. But to say that we come from a common ancestor, I think it's also an act of faith, because we don't know. We certainly don't know.
I think you're pointing to something that's very true, which is that there's huge missing pieces. And so, fine, like we can do away with that. But I still, to tie it back to what you were saying earlier about the moral burden of humans, I see this as a moment where the moral burden of humans forces and drives change, evolutionary change, where if you have a sufficiently cloistered group that has a set of morals, these are the rules by which it will structure its society, behave, and select mates. And so if you assume that over a long enough period of time, that creates a distinct lineage of a species.
But what I would say, yes, I would keep it with proto-morality. If not even, I'm not accepting, I mean, I can debate that position, but what I would say is that even if we take it as a feasible alternative, which it could be, I'm not discarding this, it is still proto-morality. It's not morality.
But even in the humans that are making the choices? So I'm saying, like, let's discard the hyena versus the cow. Let's just look at the human, right? The human lives in a moment where there are all of these various moral directions that one could take, right? Because the transhuman idea has a morality associated with it, where it's like placing these 3 super categories as being the most important ones. And so there's a group of people that will hew to that morality and will chase it at all costs. And there's another group of people that will hew to what is traditionally human, and it seems like they're liable to just diverge. And the real challenge is figuring out how to allow the people that are into transhumanism to diverge without destroying the rights of humans to continue to live the way that they want to live. Because I'm like, let them diverge. Let them become like super intelligent computer creatures. Why not? As long as they're not forcing it on anybody else.
Well, the history of super intelligent creatures with respect to the other species is not
doesn't go
very well.
Doesn't go very well. Yeah.
For
So
the
at some
others.
point, someone will be submitted and someone will conquer. That's how things work. But I'm going to go to the root of what you're saying. The problem is that there's a denial, and then again, you see this, and that's why I think Christianity, from a cultural perspective and a sociological perspective, it has been a very useful thing for human beings, in spite of all the excesses or potential excesses that they may have been. But it gives you a moral compass, at least. It's imperfect, but it gives you a moral compass. In the current times, there's no moral compass. It's basically anyone can do whatever he or she wants because it's his or her right. And there's no truth. There are no objective or absolute truths or an absolute morality. And this is part of, to utilitarianism and hedonistic utilitarianism. I would emphasize that hedonistic thing. It's all about pleasure. Pleasure is the good life. You will add another malaise, which I think is affecting our times, which is relativism. Relativism is, I would say, the fundamental flaw in our current world.
Mm.
And the point is that with Christianity, you had absolute truths. There are things that are and aren't, period. And in the current times, it's like, yeah, everything can be and cannot be. It depends on who you are, how you feel, and how you grew up, and what kind of culture you had. Everything is possible and it's not possible. It depends. Everything depends on something. But that's also, I can empirically show that that's not the case. We have absolute moral truths. And I'll put an example. So it's the best way to illustrate people. So if you say bullfighting is crap, some people will say, well, you know what? It's your point of view, because I think this is part of the culture, and this shows the battle between men and other animals, and yeah, the bulls are raised very nicely and they are treated like almost like gods. And so people will discuss, and some will be okay and some will not be okay. Okay, you have moral dilemmas there that you cannot fully resolve. If you say genital mutilation in girls in Africa is morally wrong, I think more people will be on the side to condemn that in respect with, or contrasting it with the bullfighting. More people will be against it. I can bet my life for that. But if you say death penalty is reprehensible, some people will say yes, other people will say no, and they will have the moral arguments. So you have points of view that depend on things. So those are relative points of view. But if I say to kill a 2-year-old boy, with a machete, just for fun, is an absolute wrong. If someone tells me, oh, that depends, dude, you go to the hospital, you have mental illness, or you are a potential killer. I have just shown with a very clear example that yes, there are moral absolutes. There are. It's not that we live in a world where everything is relative. Oh, my feelings prevail over facts. No. I mean, this Ben Shapiro quote, which I find it very interesting, facts don't care about your feelings. That's true. So at the bottom line, what I would say is that there are absolute moral truths. There are absolute moral truths. And for me, an absolute moral truth, for example, would be that life begins at conception. And we get into very, very tricky topics here, but you cannot shy away from them because they are part of this conversation. I believe that life begins at conception. And, biologically, genetically, physiologically, and you can prove that. You can scientifically prove that when an egg is fertilized by a sperm, you have created a unique DNA, a unique being that will potentially develop into a human being. It's a living being. Science, not myth, not religion, not interpretation. Science. So when people say no, it's not a human being because it's not yet a person. But why is not a, well, because it doesn't have a cell, it doesn't have the power to decide for his or her future. Well, so should we kill the people that are in vegetative state, who have induced comas or whatever? Oh, they don't know what, they cannot defend themselves, so let's kill them. Oh no, it's because until the 12th week, they have not developed a nervous system. So should we kill all these people that have this disease where they cannot feel stuff? Because the criteria here is that they are not feeling pain. So, well, let's get rid of all the beings that do not feel pain. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is that once you go beyond those scientific proven facts, and you start interpreting according to or depending on stuff, when you get into the realm of relativism, you fall into big trouble. Because what basically a relativist is telling you is that don't believe no one, because no one has the absolute truth. Everything can be absolutely true, but that's a contradiction in itself, because relativism rejects absolute truths. But relativism is an absolute truth in itself, that everything is relative.
Is relativism a newly popular idea in the last 100 years, or has it been rearing its head since eternity?
I think it has had episodes. I think it has had episodes. For example, during the Enlightenment, relativism was pretty hardcore. There's nothing new. So what we see right now, this reinvention of what human beings are, and this promotion of this hyper rationalistic view of things, and this this replacement of God by man. Yeah, you have had this before. People have always interpreted things, and that's fine.
But I
But what
mean,
I'm
like
trying,
even the example of killing, like there is an interpretive aspect to that, because you make the case that the person with the machete who kills a child for pleasure, definitely nobody in their right mind would think that's okay. But it's
Mhm.
not the killing itself that is the problem here, because we kill things all the time. If you eat meat,
Yes.
I mean,
The
you're
killing, the for
offshoring.
pleasure part of that is the most disturbing
That's the
part.
thing. That's the thing. But that's what I'm trying to say is that the calculation itself actually must contain within it some relativism, because you're like, killing for the bullfight is bad, but killing for the meat is good. And so there is this aspect of perpetual interpretation that is required to be able to
Context.
context that's required to be able to establish what kind of killing is good and what kind of killing is bad. Because, like, let's not fool ourselves. Anyone who eats
And this
meat
is
is
why
a
we have
killer.
laws, as far as I can tell.
Sure, but
No,
I'm
I
just
mean, no, it's fine. I find it very healthy. I mean, I do not agree with what she's saying, but I find this interesting and it's healthy. I think people should be, thinking in different ways, and this is how you bring light to different subjects. So I'm not going to say, oh, this is mean you should be, you should be deplatformed from your own podcast or
Oh, what
from
don't
your
you
own.
agree with? Sorry. Which part do you not agree with? That's interesting.
That again, I'm starting with one fundamental point is that only human beings are moral subjects because they make moral
okay.
decisions.
So the death penalty,
And
we kill people for the death penalty. We kill people in war.
yeah,
That's
we
a
don't actually. We don't.
Well, we
Uh,
support it. I mean, like if you're sending
no.
money to Israel, or you're
Yes. I mean,
sending troops to Vietnam, or
we can
if
throw.
like we
I mean, we can
ourselves are
throw.
not, we've offshored it. Like we live in a society where we do a lot of offshoring. And so,
Oh
like, we
yes.
offshore the killing of people that we don't like to
Or
people that we've
animals.
elected. Well, Miklos is making the case that animals
Yeah, we
are,
can forget about animals.
like, fine. Like, we approve
No,
of
no, no, no,
killing.
no. I think this is a fundamental point of all these the debate of transhumanism also, because at the end it's, is it moral to enhance ourselves or to modify ourselves? And morality is at the core of this thing. Relativism is at the core of this thing. Absolute objective truths are at the core of this thing. You said that. Would you objective? Let's not put the word objectively, but is it comparable to say is it comparable to kill an animal for its meat than to kill a 2-year-old boy with a machete for pleasure?
No, of course not. That's not the
Okay.
comparison I'm making, though.
No. I know, but I am saying that from this very clear distinction, without going into metaphysical interpretation or very, let's say abstract thoughts, you can actually go to you can agree on certain points. It is There's always what this Leon Kass talked about, the yuck. How do you say that? Yuck.
Yeah, yeah.
Yuck. The yuck factor. It's like yuck. Instinct is a way of. It's not the foundation of your morality, of course, but it guides you.
Sure.
So it will not create the same rejection to see an animal being killed for using that animal than killing an innocent child for the sake of pleasure. There's something that tells us that that's wrong. And when you try to rationalize that and you get into the bits and bytes, that's when I come with relativism, where I have shown with a very clear example that yes, you can reach to moral absolutes. And by absolute is not saying that is absolute per se. It's what I'm saying is that there would be widespread, massive, overwhelming consensus that is wrong.
Sure. I
So
just want to make the case that the moral absolute that we have reached is not that killing is bad. We've reached the moral absolute that killing children for fun is bad. It's not
yes,
killing that we've reached. Like, we haven't
no,
established that, like, killing is like a thing that we won't do.
exactly.
And that's, I
fully
think,
agree with that.
and so we can't, like, and I don't know what the term for that is, because relativism isn't the right word for the distinction that I'm trying to make here. It's that we must have, I think you said context, like context
Yeah,
for
for
being
me,
able
it's
to
this.
evaluate.
All of these conversations come down to voluntarism versus not, really, as far as I can tell. It's like
It has
the
to. It
child
has to
doesn't
be.
agree to getting killed, so therefore it's immoral.
Okay, well, so check it out. There was this story from Germany a couple years ago. You probably know about this. There was a guy who had a sexual fetish of killing and eating people, and there was a guy who had a sexual fetish of being killed and eaten. And they got together, and one got killed and eaten. Consenting adults, you can say mentally ill, but
Mhm.
like there's an element of consent there. The guy was like, I don't
Yes.
want to hunt somebody. I don't want to do it against their consent. I want to find somebody who's interested. And then they got together and then they did the thing. And I think he went to jail.
Absolutely, I fully agree with those cases may exist, but even if they existed, they just because they exist and they are possible, that doesn't make them good. Um, and why I will say this? Why will I say this? Because human beings are, yeah, you have all our characteristics. Yes, we're fallible. We are mortal, and we have all these problems. But we also have certain rights that we exercise. One of them is freedom. So we have freedom, as Michael said. Voluntarism, our will to do things. Yeah, why are we free? That's another question. We are free to do things that make us better, that elevate us. This is something that is might not be well thought now, but in this age of mediocrity and conformism, these things have been forgotten. We are not free for the sake of being free. We are free because we are using, or we should use that freedom to elevate ourselves. And what does elevate mean? Well, it is objectively better to learn more languages and, work hard than be a freaking parasite, receiving, subsidies from the state to get the surgeries. Sorry, I think that's a basic distinction. I think it elevates you to work hard and create a discipline, and be a good family member, be a loving father, be a loving son, or be a good member of your community, rather than being a parasite that destroys monuments in the streets because you are against of the capitalist system. Sorry, those are distinctions that I make that are very, very, very clear. And you use your freedom for good things. Now,
So
then we can go to
let's
another
define
field of
good, right?
as I
Because
said,
who,
I mean,
I think
like,
he's defining it just as constructive, as
as construct, yeah,
better for
because that
everyone.
would be a whole new direction. We would move into a very, very tricky discussion of what good and bad is. But let's, without getting into more abstract terms, and keeping it with the common sense and general understanding and our intuitions, which I think are good enough for the conversation we're having. There are things that make you better and things that make you worse. And there are things that, there are decisions that are smarter than others, and there are decisions that make you a better human being. I've absolutely fully believe in these. And that's why you have people like, I don't know, some hardworking father who and mother who worked for years to pay the university of their kids. Man, respect. They use their freedom and all their limitations to do something good. And on the other hand, you'll have someone who could have made that decision but decided to become a thief and a kidnapper. Yeah, sorry, there are distinctions. So yes, you are still free to to decide what future you have. As you can be free to decide if you want to if you want to fuse with a microchip and a hard disk in your brain, because you are free to do that. Of course, yeah, you are free to do that. But we enter into another problem, which is our humanity is a shared patrimony. It doesn't belong to a single person. So there's a usefulness also in being humans, and there's a reason why we are all humans. When I look at you, at both of you, I see fellow human beings. I see, people like me. I know without having talked to you before that you have feelings, that you have dreams, that you have fears, and I can relate instinctively to you. I see through through the through the you, I see the I. This is not me. This is Roger Scruton, and that's absolutely true. And there's a sense of shared benefits, of shared values, of shared fears. there's something that unites us and makes us a single thing in spite of all our differences. And our humanity stems from a shared nature and a shared condition. When I refer to a shared nature, I'm talking about mostly about the biological, genetic, physiological. I would talk about the psychological, anatomic dimensions that make us human beings. We all have, we all have two eyes, one nose. We walk. We're mammals. We can create. We can communicate. We have this sophisticated language. Yeah, that's a shared nature that distinguishes us from dogs, from cows, from any other species. Okay, and that nature states, and then I'm going to get in a very, very, and it shouldn't be, but in these times it is controversial to say that there are two sexes, because there are two sexes. There's no third sex or 115th gender. It's two sexes: male, female, XY, XX. Science, not interpretation. Now, from that, let's say, in spite of our shared humanity, we can have this sexual dimorphism and sexual dimorphism. From that nature, we can communicate, and from that nature stems our condition, our human condition, how we live the world as humans. We don't live, our nature says that we human beings are the only species that can write about their history. We are the only species that registers its past. No other species does that. We are the only ones. Okay, we can talk about abstract thinking, philosophy. Yeah, you told me about the orcas and the whales, that they have a very super developed language. Sorry, but let's put things in very, very empirical terms. There's no Atlantis down there built by dolphins, and there's no legal codes and moral codes, written by whales. It doesn't
I would
exist.
love if there were, though. I would love to go to Dolphin Atlantis.
That's a whole different thing. It would be nice.
Wouldn't it be cooler if there was Dolphin Atlantis?
I mean, there's some arguments to be made about the seasonal songs and all of this. I don't know.
But we
don't have to do it.
We always go back and forth, but humans are clearly distinct from the other animals in all of these ways.
Yes, but what I'm trying to make is a point here. And on top of that, that shared history, that shared abstraction or capabilities that we have that are part of our human condition, or the way we live as humans and the way we experience the world, there's also a situation that separates from other animals or other species, that we have superior aesthetic capabilities. Yes, we have seen some elephants paint. Yeah, okay, whatever. But no elephant has painted a Mona Lisa or a Guernica.
Have you seen the bowerbirds?
No.
They don't paint Mona Lisas, nothing of the sort, but they have incredible aesthetic capabilities. They go and they collect pretty things in their habitats, and then the males will arrange them in these beautiful shapes.
These corridors.
These corridors and these mating castles in the hopes of attracting a female that likes their aesthetics.
And then they do a dance in front of it. It's really quite elaborate.
Which is marvelous. I mean,
but not Mona Lisa. Not Mona Lisa,
No.
Better than most of the architecture in our city.
Well, most than kitsch art or contemporary art, yes, for sure. All that crap, this banana that was stuck into a wall. I mean, seriously, yeah.
I mean,
look, we can find isolated exceptional examples for a lot of these things, but in general, I think it's true that humans are absolutely on this other level of rearranging their environments to their tastes and so forth.
But you were I think that you were going to use the human aesthetic capability to make this larger point that sits at the top of
Yes, I am, which I am building, of course. So you have superior aesthetic capabilities, and by the way, this modern art crap is a wonderful way for money laundering.
Oh my God, yeah.
I was thinking about that. We watched a documentary recently about these modern art galleries and all this fraud that was going on, and it seemed to me that the painting prices couldn't have made sense in any other context but a way to put your money, essentially.
It's money laundering, as easy as that. Okay, so you have this. Sorry for my language, but I just get too heated.
Please.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you have this, I saw this piece of art of this idiot who piled like 7 baskets of sand, and then at some point he waited for the baskets to fall and the sand would spread on the floor, and you would have all these semi-intelligent people, around clapping this wonderful piece of art, which is 7 cubes of sand falling into the floor. And they were actually, or where you have these, frames, the frame is a white thing with a black dot in the middle. You have to be sorry for this. I don't know how, if you're used to this kind of expressions in Latin America, it's quite different, but you have to have a very low IQ to think that is art. Sorry.
Or just be super hive-minded, right? It seems like there's an emperor's new clothes element to that, where, it's the hip thing to do, so you jump on it. The prices are going up, so you want to invest. There's a lot of motives that have nothing to do with your own taste. There's something I really noticed, like we're artists and musicians, and we perform a lot, and there's a really interesting sociological element to art, which is that an audience needs permission to buy into an experience. So if we play at a bar where we don't know anybody, sometimes we won't get the best reaction immediately because they haven't heard. We're not playing cover songs people have heard before. We're doing kind of new stuff. And it's a very different experience if we have even one friend in the audience who is like, yeah, like, and then everybody else is kind of like, oh, it's okay. Like, it's okay to enjoy this. Okay. We can all enjoy it. And then the bar will eventually get, in lockstep with the music.
It occurs to me that we should put an ad on Craigslist whenever we play a show for that guy.
Just give somebody $20. Yeah. That's a good idea. It's a really good idea.
It depends. In that case, in some cases you may have to deceive your audience, which in that case it would not be. And I'm not saying it is your case, just in case, which in that case it would not be artwork you're trying to sell, but you're making money from that, which is fine. So you deceive the people, or you genuinely want them to appreciate the art, in which in that case you have to take the longer road and the harder road.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
And not everyone will.
Oh, go ahead and finish. Not everyone will. Not everybody will take the longer road.
So I will finish the idea. So these things, our human nature, from which our human condition stems, leads to another series of things, to a third one, which is our institutions, our laws. Our laws are grounded also on our lived and shared living experience. If we talk about our morality, it's individual. Our ethical standards mean it's something more communal, more collective. Institutions are there to help us deal with our imperfections, so we are not too violent to the others. It curbs our behaviors, okay? And they are also an expression of human nature and of our human condition. So, for example, marriage. We're getting into very controversial things here, but marriage, marriage is between man and woman, and that was the main purpose of it. And now it's like, anything can be married to anything. So you start, and you will say, because you will go into the emotional aspect of it, and you'll say, but these people don't have the rights to know. They should, and they should be able to get married. What I would say is, well, yeah, if the law doesn't contemplate, equality, for example, of patrimony, of hereditary stuff, or of shared experiences on planet Earth that can be enjoyed by other human beings, I would say yes, you can arrange something. So I wouldn't call it marriage. I would call it like loving contract or loving relationship or formal whatever. But words have a purpose. They describe certain things, and those certain things, those institutions that are described there, come from a human nature and come from our human condition. So, yeah, marriage is between men and women. And why? Because from marriage, and it comes from matrix, and you can go to the etymology of the word, and it's a whole explanation. It is aimed at also, procreation. Okay, we can go into more details, but I'll state the basics. Families stem from marriages, or from not from marriages, but at least from procreation between men and women. That's it. And if you put 100 homosexuals in an island, in 100 years, you will have none. everyone will be dead. So that's a factual statement. It's a scientifically, empirically proven statement, that only men and women procreate, period. The rest is just when you come up with this pregnant man, which is a subject we're also going to talk about, then you come into trouble. But my point is that institutions reflect our human condition and, by extension, our human nature. When you talk about families, I still, and thank God, we are still in our region, in Latin America, we're still fighting this and we're being successful. Families are stem from male and female relationships. And then why do I say this? Because now you're starting to reinterpret families and the meaning of family. So family can be an association of a very different kind of being. So now you have multi-parent families, which is a disgrace for the child that is used as as an object to satisfy the caprices of adults. You have multi-species families. Now your pet is not your pet; it's your family member. I mean, seriously, people are not understanding how dangerous this is. Why I say this, and it may be shocking. I'll relate to the other thing. When I was talking about things, human beings being treated as things, and what you're seeing right now is through different agendas, as you are morally enhancing animals, morally enhancing robots and avatars, and gradually decreasing the moral value of humans. And this can go in many subtle ways. I will just say the following. When you go on Instagram and TikTok, which is aimed mostly at a younger audience, they don't have the experience, they don't have the living experience. And you see this video of a tiger playing with a dog. Oh, Peep and Pop, they love each other. They are so wonderful. They run together and they play this beautiful piano music and they are just living together forever because they are loving species. And then you have the snake Max with the mice Peter, and they are loving friends. They love each other, and Max gets together with the snake, and they take these pictures. Oh, everything is so nice. Well, and they put this fancy music behind. It's a subtle manipulation. You may think it's stupid, but that's how it's easier to get. What they're telling kids, not adults, kids, teenagers, and youngsters, is that animals are wonderful, which they are, but they are morally wonderful because they don't hurt each other. They love each other. They're so lovely, How can we human beings destroy our planet? How can we be so homophobic, racist, and so bad? These animals. It's worth to save the turtles in Costa Rica, but abortion, just go for it, Too many people. Just eliminate them. There's things.
I think that the case for abortion that can be made is that, not everybody has the means to be able to raise a child. And we live in a country that has not very good support structures. And so I
think an even stronger argument would be that children raised under certain circumstances would be better off having not been born.
I think, but can you absolutely guarantee that?
I think that a parent that's like, I don't want this child is almost guaranteed to raise a bad
so what you do is you go through personal responsibility. Close your legs, or just put a knot in your. Sorry, I have to say the word. I'll just just put your banana in a safe place, or just sorry, I don't know how to put it. Just adopt personal responsibility.
But so you're basically saying be celibate?
No. There's obviously ways to
be responsible.
Yeah.
Be responsible. Be responsible. What is being taught right now to youngsters is be absolutely responsible. Everything in the name of pleasure is fine. Oh, you want to have sex? Just have sex. You want to open your OnlyFans? Open your OnlyFans. It's your freedom. It will empower you. You are doing all these pro-freedom, pro-empowerment stuff, which is absolutely degrading the youngsters. That's what you're seeing, why so many youngsters are so depressed now and meaningless and purposeless. They don't know who they are, what they do, what they want. it's freedom used in a bad way. Of course, it's easier, sorry for this, I'm going to be quite graphic, to open your legs and show your ass, because you'll make millions of, you'll make thousands of US dollars, rather than go through college or, learn a craft or do something that will require much, much more work.
Well, I just think about also the second order effects of that. I think that's where it gets into a really universal morality. It's like I think the percentage of men that use pornography is extraordinarily high, and you have to wonder what that's doing to their intimate relationships, right?
Exactly.
I've always, and it seems so normalized. It's just the status quo. I don't actually pay a lot of attention to this, but Nastia is always telling me little pieces of statistics. But it seems like that's a normal thing, right? I don't mess with this stuff myself, but the reason I don't is not even necessarily because I'm not really drawn to it, but I also realize that the second order effects of that would be devastating on my marriage. Like I think it's encoded in this idea, this ancient biblical idea, or even pre-biblical idea, that cheating on your wife doesn't work out, right? Because you need to have all of that energy and attention at this person in order to have a stable relationship, so that ideally you can have a stable family, your kids have this pillar, blah, 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 right? It makes a better world if everybody is actually keeping their intimate relationships healthy. So
I fully agree with you. And I'll put a very, very, first person example. I was very disorganized, and that's to put it mildly. I was like a hummingbird in my young years. I would just go from flower to flower, and life was good. I was always responsible. During Father's Day, I don't receive unknown presents. At least I don't know. So I'll just say that I was a little bit disorganized, but I was always responsible. And I always assumed responsibility for my actions. Always. I was very careful. Because there was I had a sense of purpose. Yeah, I love girls, but you know what? I really want to achieve something in life. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to study hard. And I can say I'm not, this is not self-promotion, but coming from Peru, it's very difficult to get a good education. And all my postgraduate studies are through scholarships, because I worked my ass to make those things happen. And while my friends were having drinks and dancing and buying cars, I was working 12, 14 hours a day, chasing my dream. I wanted to be a scholar. I wanted to be a PhD, and that was my dream. And I achieved it because I worked hard. And I was a responsible hummingbird. But let's put it this way. I was very selfish when I was younger, very selfish. And when my son was born, nature, God, or whatever thing you want to put it, nature put me in my place. And my place was, you are not the center of the universe. Your son is the center of the universe. And it is my son, my center of my universe. And I didn't have to go through any training programs, And the best thing that has happened in my life is my son. There's nothing that can compare to that. And I wish I could have had my son before. But, life works in its ways. We all have different lives. But what I'm saying here is that, we have outsourced responsibility. Someone else will be responsible for my failure. So you come through this victimhood culture that is, destroying youngsters now. Oh, I didn't make it. Someone is guilty. I'm a victim of something. It might be racism. It might be homophobia. It might be, heteropatriarchy. It might be, you name it. There's always going to be someone to blame, but you never look at your own. And I think that's the biggest problem with current younger generations. They don't assume responsibility of their actions, and they don't know who they are. They don't know where they are going, because they're saying everything is possible. You can be whatever you want. Self-perception is absolutely valid, and it is not. That's why I come back through this. I think it's a lethal combination between utilitarianism and relativism.
It's so disempowering too, by the way. That's the idea that somebody else is in control of everything all the time, right? It seems like, oh, you're just blaming people, but no, you're actually putting all of the action outside of yourself, and that's a really hopeless and anxiety-prone situation.
Absolutely, you will just be the prey of someone else, and you will be the puppet of someone else, because you're not assuming responsibility. So the thing is that what I was saying with if we go through a theoretical background, let's go through this utilitarian approach that I have mentioned a lot. If we go back to the theoretical aspect, to the history of the philosophy of utilitarianism, it was Jeremy Bentham, this English philosopher. He wrote a text in, the principles of legislation and morals in 1782, I think it was published. So what Bentham said is that, human beings have two masters, pleasure and pain. And whatever humans do, it's always to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. And you can say that is true in 99% of the cases. We are pleasure maximizing beings. If I deny this, I'm a liar. I don't like to lie, so I will accept that that's an objective truth, for instance.
Probably true
We
for
see
all
pleasure.
animals, honestly.
Exactly, and including animals. But we hide and we run away from pain, and this is true. The problem is that for a statement like that to be true, it has to be 100% true in 100% of cases. Otherwise, it's just a theory. So what happens? Yes, we maximize pleasure and we minimize pain. So Bentham came with this, hedonistic calculator. He would start to classify pains and pleasures. But there's a big problem with that. In Christian doctrine, and that's why, in spite of all the criticisms, fair and unfair, that you may make to Christianity, in Christianity, the doctrine tells you that you always have to work for your prójimo. How do you say your brother, your other?
Your progeny?
No.
What's the Spanish
Prójimo
word?
means prójimo, your neighbor, your other.
brother.
Proximity. Yeah. Okay. People closest to you.
Yeah, you have to work for others. You always have to give yourself to others. You always have to serve others, your parents, your children, your community members. You always work for others, and that's what elevates you. And through a life of service, sacrifice, and virtue, you will reach what the Saint Augustine of Hippo said, the city of God, the transition between the city of man, and we walk towards a path of progress. Actually, Augustine of Hippo is the creator of the idea of progress, not the progressives, just to put it in context.
It's like a personal progress, though. It's yeah.
No. Well, he was. If
of the
I was a
soul, right?
I mean, if I was a hummingbird, Augustine of Hippo was like, he was like a hummingbird with steroids. I mean, I don't feel bad about my past compared to him. He was really, really nasty. Well, anyways, so he decided to change his life, and he became, he's one of the fathers of the Christian doctrine. So, yeah, through sacrifice and virtue and and selflessness, we achieve this virtue and we go to heaven. Let's put it that way. But it was always looking towards the third person or the second person. It was not about the first person. It was always about the other or the others. Okay. With utilitarianism, that thing changes dramatically, because it's not going to be about the second or third person. It's going to be about the first person, my pleasure, my pain. So gradually, you stop thinking of others, because what you're trying to do now, and that was actually, Bentham said, that's morally right. We always have to seek for our benefit. That's good. So yeah, in life, that's true. We always will look also for self-interest, and we are self-interested creatures. But that's what separates us from animals also, is that, we also do things for others, in very, very selfless ways. The problem is that with utilitarianism, it became the first person, and it's the first person, the second person, the third person. It doesn't matter. It's always about me and my pleasure and my pain.
Well,
And
was
that's
Bentham
what
saying that that's how it should be? Or was Bentham just saying
No.
that that's what I've observed and that seems to be the way that people operate?
No, Bentham is not. I would say Bentham is not even guilty of what I'm saying. Bentham didn't do this in terms of what I'm saying right now. I think Bentham, actually, he said something that is also shared by Christian, doctrine, which is, the maximum happiness for the maximum amount of people. And I fully agree with that. Yeah, I fully agree with that. We should try to make the most people happy, the most possible times. I fully agree with that. But what's the problem? you stop thinking about it. It's untenable. You cannot reach that point, because if you start thinking about your pains and your pleasures, you'll stop thinking about the others. And what has happened now through utilitarianism, and I'm not blaming Bentham for this because he didn't place it in those terms, so we have to be fair, is that we're looking now for self-seeking individuals, and that's why you have hyper individualism right now, and that's what it's leading to. Let's say, how do you call identity politics? Now you'll have fragmentations because, oh, my groups are more important, and oh, we are the black club, we are the gay club, we are the transgender club, we are the trans species, we are the transbotanic, we are the blind Asian community. And you can start creating different categories at the end, in the name of identity, and in the name of freedom, and in the name of maximizing your benefits and diminishing your pains. What you create is a hyper fragmented society. And that's what you're looking right now. It's a hyper fragmented society. There's no common link.
There isn't. And at the same time, I'm like, it seems reasonable that people want to be able to come together with those who share their experiences. There's a long tradition of men's clubs. Like, we have a friend who started participating in these men's clubs, and he finds it to be deeply meaningful because he's in this environment with people that share some set of his preferences and identities.
I think there's a healthy first-person approach to this as well, though, which recognizes that pain can be a really good thing, actually. Like, inviting pain into your life can actually be really good. In fact, most of the things that will make you a stronger member of your family, of your community, and so forth, they're very difficult and hard, right? Like, when I get up in the morning, I don't really want to go running, and I don't really want to train afterwards, but I do it because I know that it's going to make me better for the people around me at the end of the day. It's going to make me better for myself. It's going to, right? So there's this foresight to pain that you kind of have to lean into. And from a first person perspective, yeah, it makes me better, but it also makes me better to the people around me. So I think there's a way to approach that if you prefer the first person that still sums up to a second person effect.
Yes, but don't misunderstand me. I'm not denying that the first person is important. It is crucial. How are you going to make others happy if you're not happy? How are you going to set a good example if you're not a good example to yourself? That's, of course, it's ingrained in us. It's self-interest is always going to be there, and it's fine. And as you said, by doing good things to us, we do good things to others. We cannot be good members of society if we ourselves are rotten and we do not take care of ourselves. I fully agree with that. But my point is that, this excessive attention to ourselves, that's the problem. It's not that we pay attention to ourselves. It's paying attention to ourselves with steroids.
Yeah.
It's all about ourselves.
I mean, I think excess as a value, I think is a solid one of those objective moral principles, that like excess is bad.
From a scientific standpoint too, there's been studies where they find that some of the most productive antidepressant treatments involve taking care of something like a pet or a plant or a baby or whatever. Doing some work where you're actually taking care of something actually takes away depression like that.
Absolutely. You find worth in your life. I feel very proud, as I was saying, I feel very proud of what I have achieved in my life. And people do not know, only my closest members, my circle of trust, they know how much I suffered to get this. There was lots of bad nights, a lot of bad moments, tension, frustrations, sometimes some tears, but I made it. And to gain that and the satisfaction you get from earning what you have is such a wonderful thing. That sets an example, for example, to my son, for instance. I have the moral authority to tell my son that if you work hard for what you want, you will make it. It will feel great, because I have experienced it. And I think these are things that the youngsters are not experiencing anymore, because responsibilities are taken away from them. And they live in a culture where rights are universal and multiple and eternal and infinite. And responsibilities, you don't worry about that. But the point is that you are outsourcing responsibilities to someone else. made that someone else be human beings, or if we get back into in track, it can be
Yes.
algorithms. For instance, I'm just saying.
A giant
But we,
machine to make all of our decisions for us.
which is the sad thing. People are not understanding that. Yeah, we started with Netflix. Netflix recommends movies. That's a very trivial thing. Okay, I don't mind if the algorithm recommends me movies. That's a minor thing. If you use Waze or Google Maps, that gets trickier because you are outsourcing your responsibility of guiding yourself in the city to the algorithm. So a Waze will tell you what's the fastest, not necessarily the safest or the wisest way to go from point A to point B,
Or the most beautiful.
or the most beautiful. But it will tell you the most efficient. It's a world towards efficiency.
There's also the
And
back door to that too, which really freaks me out, which is, okay, recommend me movies, but what happens when some entity, whether it's a state entity or a corporate entity, starts to decide what
recommends for
movies
you.
I should be watching, right? And that's
Exactly.
playing out, right? That couldn't be a bigger problem as far as I can tell. In fact, I think it's one of the biggest scary things about looking at the techno-futurist landscape is the information bottlenecks and who's in control of what information Look, a democracy works if everybody's informed, but it
Yes.
doesn't work if that information is coming from some interested third party.
Let me be absolutely blunt with this, this outsourcing of responsibility. Now you have youngsters who don't know what a woman is. I'm sorry. Humanity is just doomed. If you don't know what a woman is or what a
We'll
man
be all
is,
right. We're gonna pull
I
through.
don't think so.
It's just a
No,
swing of the pendulum.
well, hopefully, because I think that's very quite depressive for me,
I think that
what
the
is a human?
idea is that people want to play out something that is different from the past. There's a lot of suffering that lives inside of very strict gender roles. Like if a man who is feminine, there's men that are feminine. They just have lower levels of testosterone. And so
100%.
and we operate with traditional gender roles in such a way that that person suffers for forever. And so, like, I think that the idea that we've gotten to right now, which is like there's no such thing as a man or a woman, is absurd. But I think that the synthesis condition is not we should return to super traditional gender roles. It's that man contains multitudes, woman contains multitudes. Allow people to express themselves and find each other so that they can continue to develop and grow.
Yes, I would agree partially with what you say. It is true. We have different ways of expressing ourselves, not only sexually, but in general terms. We can express ourselves in many, many different ways.
Like the
I
way you
fully agree
style your
with that.
hair, the clothes you wear, the way that
Yes,
your voice sits in your throat.
I will be blunt, but you still have a vagina, and I have a penis, and
You
Sure.
you
do?
still have sex. Don't misgender me. I'm going to get you, you're macro triggering me right now. I'm going to go to my safe space. No, no, no. Well, I'm just no.
But
What I'm saying is that
I think that the point is that like the vagina or the penis does not define the limits to how you can live your life.
Like we decided a long time
yes,
ago to put them behind curtains.
Yeah, and I
it,
think that's significant. Like you look at
yes,
baboons and you're like, that baboon is an estrus. You look at women and
yes.
you're like, you can't tell if she's ovulating or not. Like there's a reason. And I don't know the reason for that, but we have chosen to obscure that for some reason.
Yes and no. Well, let's put it this way. You will always find cases. Now that I was checking this video, which is the most, that it says that basically what everything that was told in the past about sexuality is wrong, and actually the world is it's a queer world. And I was like, I need an asteroid right now. Hit planet Earth. This is done.
I
We're
just like I
done.
know so many people that suffer under very traditional gender roles. People that discover really late in life that they're asexual or that they're homosexual, and they've constructed this entire identity trying to conform to something that doesn't work for them, and
Okay.
their lives are destroyed. And then they destroy other people's lives because they get to 40 and they're like, "Honey, I'm gay."
Yes. Which is, let's put it this way. My best friend, is gay. My best friend and the godfather of my son So I'm not coming from the homophobic,
No,
like
I'm not. I don't think so.
I'm not saying this for you. I'm saying this because audiences are very different, and I know there will be trolls who will say, "Where did you get this? This freaking Catholic fanatic or whatever." I don't care. I'm just saying, just in case they will throw that bullet. I don't care. It's not true. And what you say is absolutely true. There's people that have been repressed, because of their sexuality. And I think it's reprehensible to condemn or, destroy the lives of a person who doesn't feel in its right sexual role or sexual, what there's let's say, a dissonance between his body and his feelings or his hormones. And I think those cases should be well accommodated by law, and not only by law but by education, which is the most important thing. Law will not be fulfilled if people are not educated. So I fully agree with that. So let me state that 100% clearly. That doesn't mean that what you're telling me is, and this has to be taken into consideration because it has an impact on all our lives, is that those rights of these minorities have to be taken into account, but without altering the lives of the majorities. And I'll bring a very, very clear example. I have to fight here, and I had to be very careful here to find a school where they wouldn't teach that gender ideology garbage to my son. Okay, nobody has the right to come and tell my son, that a boy can be a girl or a girl can be a boy. First of all, because yes, you can come through studies and you can go to, like people like Alfred Kinsey and all these mentally deviant and sexually deviant people who have now become martyrs of science, incredibly, and tell me that, oh yes, it's wonderful, we are teaching through inclusion and equality. No, you're not. Let children be children. Let children play as children. Children do not think of sexuality as adults do. And everything has been hypersexualized because sex is a source of pleasure. Sex is a source of pleasure. So everything has been hypersexualized. I'm sorry. But you know what? In Africa, in Latin America, people are dying from hunger. Let's put priorities here. I'm not saying they are incompatible or they cannot be fixed or dealt with in parallel. I'm not saying, there's multitasking and we can deal with several issues at the same time. But this hyper prioritization of gender things and trans things, it has me over the top.
I mean, I think that's totally reasonable because it's a top-down imposition of a worldview to children who should just be free to fulfill.
What's the underlying motivation there, do you figure?
And I think that this comes back to the transhumanism because it seems like these things are folded into each other because, and what I've kind of come to is this idea that when you normalize the complete modification of the human body, then you lower the barrier to acceptance of the machine and the human melding, and that's I can see.
There's a theory.
No, that's touche. That's straight. The Floret has you have won the spade gymnastics. How do you call it? Esgrima? This competition where they fight with swords in the
fencing.
Olympics.
Fencing.
Okay, you have touche. You have just nailed it. That's it. And that's where I come with my book. I wrote a book in 2000. Well, I started writing in 2016. I published it in 2022. It's now in Spanish, soon in Hungarian, soon in Romanian, soon in Portuguese, hopefully soon in English.
Excellent.
It has sold extremely well, over 25,000 copies, without any promotion of any kind. So now I have publishing houses behind me. But at the beginning, it wasn't like that because it was a conspiracy theory, and all the things that I said are happening now. So yeah, it wasn't a conspiracy; it was information. But anyways, what you're saying is exactly the point. I mean, all these, let's say, gender ideology, transgenderism, transsexualism, transspeciesism, trans age, trans race, trans botanic, trans economic, all these trans categories at the end are proto or pre-transhumanisms, because you start from the same point. You are redefining and reconfiguring nature. You redefine humanity, or you redefine, what a human being is, because now you don't have male female, you have trans male, trans female, you have sexual, you have sexual aliens, and you have an endless number of genders. So self-perception becomes the norm, and factual objective biology and anatomy stops being part of the thing. I'm not saying that you have cases. I'm not denying the existence of cases. Let me be clear about this. Those cases exist, but you don't accommodate all the institutional framework just for that tiny minority in detriment of the vast majority of people. That's my point. It should not be the case. There should be a position where you, through law and public policy, you can accommodate the rights and needs of these people without destroying the whole institutional matrix. And that's my criticism. You go, and I can tell you this, you go to Latin America, you go to Africa, and the vast majority of people will, it's not that they are against it. They now hate this agenda. What they have done is even worse. Now there's real hate for homosexuals, but not for homosexuals, for LGBT activists, which is different, the political side of it, because people are fed up of this. Now, why do I say redefinition? Because you come up with these categories that nature does not consider. Okay? And what does reconfiguration mean? Well, phalloplasties, vaginoplasties are reconfigurations. Hormonization of children is using technology and science to reconfigure de facto human beings. The mastectomies in 13, 14-year-old teenagers is de facto reconfiguration of their human nature, and by extension of their human condition, because they won't behave anymore like girls. That's why I say they will behave now as, non-girls, or self-perceived boys, or self-perceived aliens, or self-perceived whatever they want to think they are, and that will lead to the change of institutions. Now we have to accommodate. Look at these things. I mean, in the States, it's criminal what is happening. So you see that that's why I say ideas are not just neutral. They have a profound impact. And it's not an animosity and a violence against these people. I seriously feel for someone who was born in the male body and feels like a woman. It must be horrible. And in some cases, yes, in some cases, case by case, you can go, and in some cases, surgery, gender, change surgeries will be necessary, and they will help. But not with this ad libitum, this is open surgeries for everyone. No.
So it's like the institutionalization that's really troubling here, right? It's the pressure. And I think that we can't ignore that the corporations have jumped on board with a lot of this. Like when I go, that's one of the things that's the only time I really feel alienated by this, is when I go to a store and I see, these flags for sale, all this clothing at Walmart. That's, it almost seems once the corporations have got on board, it's beyond concern for people. It's a market all of a sudden.
Absolutely.
Do you think that chopping people up into all these different spaces makes for a more effective consumer base at the end of the day?
Yes, of course, because you can create a set of products, of a wide range of products, not only clothing, medicine, restaurants, lifestyles, tourism. Yeah, of course, it's a business-oriented thing. And what you will see is that, there's a huge discrepancy between LGBT activists and the actual LGBT community. And you will see, and this is also, you can express it if you go to Twitter or X or whatever you want to name it. I follow this wonderful platform. If someone of them is watching this by chance, thank you for what you're doing. Gays Against Groomers. I love them. I don't know if you have checked that X account. It's a group of homosexuals or LGBT people that are against, these groomers, these pro-pedophile, because there's a lot of pedophilia behind, and pedophilia.
Yeah, there's like some really weird layers
and
to that.
The work they are doing is just wonderful. And this is a group of homosexuals, and I said all these, these homosexuals primarily, who are fighting against pedophilia. My respect to them. How can I not respect those people? I wish them the best.
If I was to kind of wrap this into something that has handles on it, I think that the case that you were making about objective morality and relativism and utilitarianism earlier is dangerous not necessarily because of the principles of individual satisfaction as being primary, though there is something that happens that's negative when you stop caring about your community. But I don't see in like a lot of the LGBT people that I know that are like very hedonistic that they don't care about their communities. However, hold on one second. The problem comes when you remove people's right to say, hey, that's messed up, then bad actors that are doing creepy things can come in and start to manipulate people into making decisions that are objectively negative, but because the ability to evaluate whether or not the decision is positive or negative has eroded, they can't see it. And that's a pretty big danger.
Absolutely. I think you have summarized it very nicely. Yes, I think it goes through that way, and I firmly believe that it is a moral duty, even if it's if it's apparently unpopular. Because I'm saying the vast majority of people think that these agendas have gone way too far, and they are fed up of them. But then you have a coercive state on top of this, putting you have a coercive state right now.
I mean, I think we
It's
should
a
be
mic.
skeptical of professional activism in general. We had a really close call with
Absolutely.
this when we were in grad school at Columbia, and there
Absolutely.
was a union that came in that wanted to unionize the grad students. And at first, we're like, yeah, a lot of grad students are pretty well abused, especially the ones that are on work visas and so forth. And so we went to some of the meetings, and it very quickly became apparent that they had an entirely different agenda. This was a business to them, right? And so
Absolutely.
anytime I see someone who's making money off of activism and that's their career, I'm kind of like, I don't know how you can really hew to the message in so much as you have this other interest on board now.
You have hit the jackpot. Activists are cancer. It's self-interest most in, I would say, especially when they get paid for this. It's
I think that's the
self-interest.
clutch is the payment. It's like I can
Absolutely.
be an activist for things I believe in. I mean, I believe by sitting here telling you how I believe in living, I'm sort of being an activism, even if it's personal responsibility or whatever. But I'm not, that's not my whole life, right? I don't make a
Mhm.
profession of going around and telling people how to live.
Absolutely. And I share your view. Everybody has to mind their own business, but there are things that should be respected because they belong to all of us. And that's what I was saying at the end. Our nature, our human condition. Yes, we have different lives. We will have different paths in life, but we have a shared nature. We have a shared condition. We have shared institutions, and we should protect them. And they are all interrelated. If you affect one of them, you will affect the other ones by insistence. And that leads to, what I was saying, the transgenderism and all these trans categories, plus the LGBT categories, the gender ideology categories. They are endless. You can be whatever you want to be, and you destroy the main patrimony, which is our humanity. And it opens. Why? It's not because they are destroying humanity. No, don't get me wrong. It's because they are used as a first step towards denaturalizing people. For example, if you and this is a hardcore example, if a trans woman stops injecting his estrogen, or if a trans man stops injecting testosterone, he or she will become a he or she again. It's as simple as that. So
Sure,
what
but
my point?
CRISPR technology isn't that far off, and so you actually like if we can, this is a theoretical, but you could fully edit the genome at some point.
Yes, and that's where things get tricky because you open a Pandora box. Oh, well, if you are allowing them to do this, why don't you allow me to mix with a different species? Or why don't create chimeras? Huh?
I'm not
It might.
Might
sure.
happen.
I don't. I think that there is a really solid evolutionary argument to this, which is that the human mimetic tendencies that are centered around religion or very strong traditional cultures will
Mhm.
forever perpetuate humans for as long as the planet allows them to survive. Like birth rates alone, like you look at the birth rates of Mormons or Catholics, they're way higher than the birth rates of the hyper-technical Japanese or the South Koreans.
Exactly. See what is happening right now with in all these countries where all these policies, pro diversity, inclusion, and equality have become so widespread. Look at Canada. Canadians are running out from Canada. It's not that they want to go to Canada anymore, and they want to run out from Canada for all other reasons. Also, Spain, Japan, the UK, Germany. The demographic winter that is coming is going to be so bad. That there's already demographic replacement going on here because Muslims have like what 5, 6 children per couple, and
Well, the
Europeans have
Mormons
more.
too, right? Like the Mormons are
But you cannot compare. I mean, in Europe, I've been here for many years, and I
you
can
guys
tell
don't
you
really have
this.
Mormons.
No, you don't have many. Christianity here is almost like a memory, and it shows. It's that I would say the decayment of cities here is quite evident, and nobody will say that we live better than we lived at 20 years ago. It's worse. And you can see that demography is changing. Everything is changing here, and it will not change for good. I'm telling you, because this will ripe open to civil conflict at some point. And I'm not Nostradamus. It's just a normal thing to think, when at some point you'll have so many LGBTs from one side and you will have so many Muslims from the other side that they will collide at some point. Things are going to get nasty. It's just that it's just a problem waiting to come up
Unless
to
there's something about living in cities that induces people to develop in this way. And I think that the argument could be made that modernity, like you move from, I don't know, like Azerbaijan or something to London, and the likelihood that your kids aren't going to hew to your religious background and instead
Yes,
get subsumed into the culture is pretty high. Just
yes, yes,
because of the
yes.
fact that like density and all of these other things. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's so many things that are playing out to create a shift in human tendencies that
Yes.
are organic in the sense that they come from the environments in which we live. And then there's this
Hmm.
other force that's coming from the top down that has both
Yes.
money and power that is
Yes.
interested in developing super intelligence or developing super well-being or interest in super longevity. And that's not going to be an egalitarian technology that is distributed to everyone. It's going to remain in the hands of people. And so it seems
Yes.
like the task is to make these environments more livable and humane so that humans are more inclined to hew to whatever is, you know, traditional and healthy.
Yes, I
And so
agree with
that's
what you
like
have.
that's our task is to like restructure the
Yes.
environments.
As I have disagreed with you in some points, I fully agree with you in this one. I fully agree with what you have said. I think that's the way to go. We have to remember that we are humans and we have to behave like humans. And we have to get more in touch with nature. And in that sense, what I was saying, Jacques Ellul said, part of the mechanization of society is that it loses touch with nature. And the more denaturalized we are, the worse it becomes. It is not Jacques Ellul only. Karl Jaspers, this Swiss German psychiatrist, was in the same line. He said that we should go back to our transcendence. We should go back to our spiritual side, whether it's Christianity or whether it's Buddhism or whatever. Let's be human again, because from our nature and condition stems also our transcendental dimension. We're spiritual beings. And they say, and transhumanists will reject this and say, no, we are all material, we're substance, we are ether in
Hmm.
Aristotelian terms. No, we are spiritual. And I always put these nice examples are the best way to teach these kind of things or to show things. You can have, let's say, I don't know, the Four Stations of Vivaldi, wonderful piece. So Vivaldi composed that that music. He had his partiture, so he put do re mi fa sol, and he made the things, and you can actually read the music. You can actually read. That's the structure. That's the science. You have discovered the science. But when you listen to that piece, you will remember places. You will remember a love. You will remember your children. You will remember a sad moment, or perhaps a happy moment. I'm sorry, but you don't give a damn about the structure of that song. You just remember and make you feel what it makes you feel, and that's what you will enjoy. What this and this progress, materialistic progress, utilitarian progress, scientificist, not scientific, but scientificist
Scientism, I
progress.
think.
Scientism, yes, this belief that we don't need God, but science has become an object of adoration. Science will have all the answers. It's not true. I mean, Roger Scruton, the great British philosopher, which I had the pleasure to be his student or whatever, he said something that is absolutely true. He said, science does not have all the answers because science doesn't pose all the questions, and that's a massive truth. What's my purpose in life? Okay, bring the scientific method, you moron. And these are meaningful questions, and these are questions that make us profoundly human. And they will never, unless we become automats, or unless we become a part of the actor network theory of Latour, or if we have our own sensor with this internet of all things. Unless we accept that future, we still have a human side, and I want to protect that human side, and that's my work. That's what I do. I actually, through all my talks and all my speeches, I travel plenty through Europe and America. I'm actually going to the States. I'm going to Los Angeles on the 20th and 21st of September. I'm going to be there giving a presentation to the Latino community there. I do it because I think, we are mean, we're bad, but when I feel the hug of my son, sorry, everything is worth it. Everything is absolutely worth it, and it is worth to fight for what we are. And I always say, once you reverse this relationship of technology in the service of human beings, you're doomed. And that's what's happening right now. Humans are just another input for technological progress. And medicine and transhumanism are not the same. Sorry for the morons that will come and say, oh, but we have done this with prostheses. If someone loses his legs in an accident, I think prosthetic legs are wonderful. But if a mentally ill guy comes and says, amputate my legs because I want to have no, sorry. And that's the reverse of the relationship. Yes, medicine is wonderful. Yes, technology is wonderful. If it's good, if it's used for purposes that elevate the human being, that not degrade its dignity or degrade its value. That's everything. What I'm trying to do is that, and I'll keep fighting that, and I do this from a secular perspective. I don't use religious arguments, and I have friends that are Catholic and others are Protestant, and they use religious arguments. I don't use religious arguments because I think that through a secular perspective, you will reach more youngsters, because youngsters right now are rebelled against religion. They just don't want to, because they have been indoctrinated so badly, because they lack the life experience to understand how meaningful certain experiences are. As Michael was saying, pain elevates you at some point. Suffering makes you appreciate joy. Solitude makes you appreciate companionship.
Especially voluntary suffering, right? Voluntary solitude, right? All of these things that you make this bargain with yourself and your future self.
Exactly. And now a moron will come and say, oh, you're advocating for suffering. No, moron, I'm not advocating for suffering. I'm advocating for, the idea that life is a box of chocolates. Let's quote the great philosopher Forrest Gump, and that's the truth. And you deal with your box of chocolates. How boring can be a life that is predictable? How boring will it be? I am sure that if we reach immortality because we are humans or whatever is left of us, there will be cults that will promote suicide because we're never happy with what we have. And that's how things are going to be. So let's not just, experiment with our greatest gift as what we are. Protect that at all costs. And that's, it's a purpose of my life. I have found a massive purpose in my life by doing what I do. And I feel extremely satisfied and happy, and I feel full in every aspect. When I have given lectures to 250 avocado producers in Morelia, Mexico. And I've been to political conferences in Hungary. I've been in Mexico. I've been Chile. I've been everywhere. I've been in the States. I've been in Spain. and different audiences, but the feeling is always the same. People get the message, especially the youngest ones. And I'm going to tell you, in our conferences, and I say our because it's not only me, there's another group of friends that are working here. We're spreading the message, the secular message, and some others the religious message, is that our audiences 3 or 4 years ago were made of 70% older than 50. And now it's 70% younger than 35.
Nice.
People are absolutely, especially the young ones, they are tired of not being able to express their feelings for a girl because they will be, labeled as a potential rapist, or they will have to sign a contract to have sex, or they have to put cameras because they don't want to have a lawsuit or a fake accusation. The youngsters are fed up of all this bullshit, and they should, and they will, and this idiocy will come to an end at some point. These excesses will come to an end at some point. The cost will be massive. I think we are just, you're just, trying the tip of it. When this generation of brainwashed kids comes into power, all things are going to get bad. But once Rome collapsed, it took some centuries, but it flourished again. So it's life is like that. We're in the downward cycle, but at some point we'll go up again, and that's where I come. I hope my work will be remembered in the future, or at least there were some people with common sense that did the right thing. So yeah, that's
It only took 1,500 years. We can wait.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, it's just nothing. It's a short time.
Well, listen, man, we didn't even get into AI, which I was hoping to, but I know you said you gotta bounce after 2 hours, and we've actually crossed it already. I was surprised. Look at the clock; it's all this time's flown by. But yeah, if you have time, maybe next year or down the line, I'd love to talk to you some more.
Well, it has been a pleasure. Well, it's past midnight here. I'm quite tired, but it has been very. It has. I have enjoyed this conversation very much because I like to be challenged. Also, it's very boring when you don't have an interaction. Everybody says yes, yes, or yes, or no. No. I like debate. I like to have different points of view. And actually, we are motivated by the same thing. It's the search of truth, and the search of doing things for a constructive purpose. I think it's absolutely worth it. And I have found that on your side, on both of you. So I thank you for this wonderful interview. I have had a lot of fun. I hope you have enjoyed it too. I'm more than happy to come up next time, whenever it is, whenever you feel like. I'm very happy to talk to you. If I go to the States, I'll be happy to meet you there also. We can have a coffee. But
yeah, for sure, hit us up if you're ever up in these parts. We're down in San Francisco a lot too, if you're ever there, so we spend probably half our time down there. So yeah,
if we San Francisco, I don't feel very
hey, they probably need your help more than anybody, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, I think
sometimes you got to go where you're needed, not where you want to go.
Yeah, well, I don't think they will be like, I will have an open committee reception there, but
I don't know, man. You'd be surprised. I have a lot of friends there, and I think this anxiety is bubbling. I think there is an audience that's hiding out and feeling maybe perhaps ashamed of their perspectives.
Yes. But it has been a pleasure, honestly, and thank you so much. Sorry for all the waits and postponements. I absolutely was out of. I have so many things to do. I'm just not playing the busy card. I am busy, but thank you so much.
I'm glad you're busy, man. Don't worry about it. I'm glad we made it happen.
Wonderful. So take care, and to your audience, thank you for keeping up with this video. I hope you get something interesting. If you want to troll me, that's fine. I'm used to it. If you want to support me, wonderful. You're welcome. And
real quick before you go, where do folks find you? Are you on Twitter? Where's the best place to find you?
Oh yes, well, I have my YouTube channel, which is my name, Miklos Lukacs. Miklos space Lukacs. I've not used that. I've not uploaded videos regularly for the past 9 months. But I'm getting closer to 200,000 subscribers, and I think that's going to grow pretty fast because I'm retaking that. So they can find me there. Now I have a radio program in Peru, which is reaching 18 million people nationwide, plus plus 22 countries in the Americas, plus Spain. So my audience is going to grow even far
Congrats.
faster. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, I basically use YouTube and Instagram. It's Miklos Lukacs, the same 8 at the end. So you can find me there. And yeah, I have content in English. Actually, I have wonderful interviews. I have interviewed. The interview that made me the most proud of is Sir Roger Scruton, this great British philosopher, who was my I would say my philosophical mentor. I have interviews of Jordan Peterson. I've interviewed him also. I've interviewed John Lennox, the great, he's a mathematician from the University of Oxford. Also wonderful mind. He has excellent debates about the differences between, this contraposition between science and religion. And you will watch his videos. He absolutely decimates Richard Dawkins. He ridicules him. I just enjoyed so much that
It's too
discussion.
easy.
Well, you will find John Lennox also there, and other prominent figures of the extreme right wing, medieval, hyper conservative, fanatic, ultra, whatever. I just don't know how many labels they put us, but I'm just a simple man, looking the best for my son. That's what summarizes me. So thank you so much.
Right on, man.
And,
Keep it up.
I'll see you.
I look forward to seeing how it grows.
Okay. Well, take care.
Thank
All right,
you
you
so
too.
much. Miklos.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.